the silent curse. I sit beside him, my fingers clenched tightly together, pressing against each other as if they might shatter under the pressure. My lips do not move, yet every corner of my mind screams in rage, in helplessness. Can he hear me? Can he feel the curse buried deep in my heart? He is a stranger to me, yet he is my husband. His name, Rihan Rahman, a name that carries power, wealth, and an air of arrogance. Everything about him exudes control, from the way he walks to the way he breathes. He married me, but not for love. No, love has no place in this transaction. His only goal, my wealth. My father was a renowned businessman, a tycoon with an empire spanning across industries. When he passed away, I became the sole heir to his enormous fortune. But there was one problem. I am mute. A girl who cannot speak. A girl the world sees with pity, with whispers of sympathy that sting more than knives. I did not choose this marriage. It was decided for me. My so-called well-wishers, the ones who surrounded me like vultures after my father's death, convinced me that I needed a guardian, a husband to protect me from those who would exploit my vulnerability. They painted Rian as my savior, the man who would shield me from the hungry world. But I know the truth. Rian doesn't love me. He barely even looks at me, except when required. To him, I am a contract, a walking vault of money, a silent woman who cannot question, cannot complain, cannot expose his lies. But what he doesn't know is that silence is not weakness. I may not have a voice, but my thoughts are sharp. And if he thinks he can own me, manipulate me, then he is gravely mistaken. I curse him in my heart, not knowing if he can read my thoughts. And if he can, then let him tremble. The wedding night. The night is heavy with an eerie stillness. A cold breeze drifts through the open balcony, making the curtains flutter like ghosts in the dimly lit bedroom. I sit on the edge of the grand, ornate bed, my wedding dress still wrapped around me, suffocating, clinging to my skin like chains. Rian stands across the room, removing his cufflinks with slow, deliberate movements. He doesn't look at me, doesn't acknowledge my presence, except for a fleeting glance in the mirror. "You must be tired," he finally speaks, his voice calm but devoid of warmth. "You can sleep. I won't disturb you." Disturb me? How ironic. He has already disturbed my entire existence. I do not nod, do not acknowledge his words. Instead, I slowly reach for my notebook and pen, the only way I can communicate. My fingers tremble slightly as I write, each word carrying the weight of my resentment. "Do you regret this marriage?" Rian pauses, his eyes flickering towards my words. A humorless smirk tugs at his lips as he reads. "Regret?" he repeats, his voice laced with something unreadable. "No, I don't believe in regret. Everything is a transaction, and I never enter a deal that does not benefit me." His honesty stings, even though I expected it. "So I am just a transaction to you?" I write again. Rian steps forward, his tall frame casting a shadow over me. He picks up my notebook, reads the words, then looks at me. Really looks at me, for the first time that night. His dark eyes hold a flicker of something unreadable. Amusement, curiosity, or is it something more dangerous? "You tell me," he says finally. A woman with no voice, yet with more power than most men in this country. A mute heiress, valuable, yet easy to control. Isn't that what the world sees? My fingers tighten around the pen. I want to scream, but no sound will ever escape my lips. I want to tell him that he is wrong, that I am not weak, that I am not someone to be controlled. Instead, I write, slowly, deliberately. "You may own this marriage, but you do not own me." Rian's eyes darken as he reads my words. A long silence stretches between us. Then, slowly, his lips curl into a smirk, not of amusement, but of challenge. "We'll see," he murmurs, placing the notebook back into my hands before turning away. I watch his retreating figure, my pulse hammering in my veins. Yes, we will see. Because this marriage may have begun as a transaction, but it will not end on his terms, it will end on mine. Whispers of defiance. The days blend into nights, and the walls of this mansion become both my prison and my battlefield. I watch, I observe, and I learn. Rian is not an easy man to read. He moves with effortless control, calculating, precise. He is always on his phone, always in meetings, always making decisions that do not concern me, because to him, I am not meant to be concerned. I am a silent presence in his home, in his life. But silence is deceptive. I sit in the vast dining hall, staring at the untouched breakfast before me. The servants hover in the background, eyes darting toward me with the same hesitance they have since the day I arrived. They don't know what to make of me. A mute bride. A mistress of the house who does not speak, who cannot command with words, but still holds the power of wealth. Rian enters, his tailored suit impeccable, his presence commanding the room without effort. He does not greet me. He never does. Instead, he takes his seat across from me, his eyes scanning the newspaper in one hand while the other casually reaches for his coffee. I pick up my pen and notebook, the only voice I own, and write, "Do you enjoy ignoring me?" He glances up, an eyebrow raised. A slow smirk tugs at his lips as he places the newspaper aside. "I don't ignore you," he replies smoothly. "I simply don't see the need to entertain unnecessary conversations." A sharp sting pricks at my chest, but I refuse to show it. Instead, I write again. "Then consider this necessary." I slide the notebook toward him, my fingers brushing against the cold glass of the table. He picks it up, his gaze flickering between my words and my face, assessing, as if trying to determine if I am worth the effort of a response. "You want conversation?" He muses, amusement flickering in his dark eyes. "Fine, let's talk." He leans forward, elbows resting on the table, his fingers lazily intertwining. "Tell me," he says, "do you think this marriage will change anything?" I tighten my grip on the pen and write, deliberately slow, "It already has." His smirk falters, just for a second. Then it's back, a mask he wears so well. "How so?" I tilt my head, watching him the way he watches me, calculating, assessing. Then, with steady hands, I write, "Because you are starting to notice me." A heavy silence settles between us. His gaze sharpens, his fingers tapping against the table in slow, deliberate beats. I can tell he doesn't like being outplayed, even in something as small as this. "Noticing you," he repeats, as if tasting the words. Then he leans back, eyes glinting with something unreadable. "Perhaps, but don't mistake my curiosity for care, wife." The way he says wife, cold, detached, sends a chill down my spine. I pick up my notebook and write my final words for the morning. "Then don't mistake my silence for submission, husband." His jaw tightens. For the first time, Rian doesn't have a response. I rise from my seat, my heart pounding, but my face calm. I pick up my notebook, tuck the pen into my pocket, and walk away. Behind me, I feel his eyes on my back following me. Yes, he is noticing me now. And this is just the beginning. The secrets within these walls. The mansion is grand, but it is not empty. Every corridor whispers with secrets, and I intend to uncover them. I move through the hallways, my fingers trailing against the cool marble walls, memorizing every turn, every doorway. Servants scurry past me, their eyes lowered, their steps hurried. They fear him. Do they fear me? I enter his study when he is not home. The room smells like leather and expensive whiskey, the air thick with authority. His desk is large, pristine, every file organized, every pen placed with precision. A control freak, I note. A man who likes order. I search. My hands move quickly, opening drawers, skimming through documents. He has business dealings, investments spread across industries, but it's the locked drawer at the bottom that catches my attention. I kneel, running my fingers over the small silver lock. "What are you hiding, Rian?" A shadow falls over me. My blood turns cold. "Looking for something, wife?" I freeze, my fingers gripping the drawer handle. Slowly, I turn my head to see him standing at the doorway, his suit jacket draped over one arm, his expression unreadable. He steps forward, each footstep slow, measured. "You are full of surprises," he muses, his voice quiet but laced with something dangerous. "Tell me, what were you hoping to find?" I straighten, meeting his gaze with defiance. I do not look away. Instead, I reach for my notebook and write, "The truth." Rian watches me for a long moment, then chuckles. A deep, rich sound that holds no real amusement. "You think I have hidden truths?" he asks. I write. "Everyone does." His eyes darken. He steps closer, so close I can feel his presence, feel the quiet intensity that radiates off him. "You want the truth, wife?" he whispers, his voice like silk and steel. "Then earn it." The challenge lingers between us. He does not move, nor do I. This is no longer just a marriage, it is a game, and neither of us intends to lose. The game begins. I have learned something about Rian Rahman. He thrives in control. Every move he makes is calculated, every word he speaks is deliberate. He does not allow room for chaos, for uncertainty. And yet, I unsettle him. It is in the way his gaze lingers a second too long, in the way his smirk falters when I challenge him. He expected a mute wife, a docile presence. What he got was something else entirely. I may not have a voice, but I have power. And power, when wielded correctly, is far more dangerous than words. A silent war. The days pass, thick with tension. Rian is watching me now, studying, measuring my actions. I can feel his presence, the way his eyes follow me even when he pretends to be uninterested. But I do not cower, I do not back down. Instead, I push. At dinner, I rearrange the cutlery just enough to disrupt his sense of order. I leave books slightly out of place in his study, move a paperweight an inch to the left. Small, insignificant details. Except for a man like him, who notices everything. He never says anything, never acknowledges my defiance. But I see it in the way his jaw clenches, in the flicker of irritation that dances behind his cold eyes. It is a silent war, and I am winning. A trap set in silence. One evening I decide to test him further. Rian has a routine, meetings in the morning, work in his study late into the night. He never deviates, never changes his schedule. Predictability is his strength and his weakness. I slip into his study again, this time without hesitation. The locked drawer is still there, its silver handle gleaming under the dim lights. But tonight, I am not careless. I do not touch it. Instead, I leave my notebook open on his desk, a single sentence written in bold, defiant strokes. Secrets do not stay buried forever. Then I leave. The reckoning. That night, I feel him before I see him. I am in my room, the heavy silence wrapping around me like a second skin. The door clicks open, slow and deliberate. I do not turn. I do not need to. I can feel the weight of his stare, the quiet storm brewing beneath his calm exterior. "You enjoy playing games, don't you?" His voice is smooth, but there is an edge to it, a dangerous, razor-sharp undertone. I pick up my notebook, my fingers steady as I write. Only when my opponent is worthy. He exhales sharply, a mix of amusement and frustration. "You think you're clever." I write again. "I think I am winning." Silence stretches between us. A battle fought in unspoken words. in the air thick with unspoken tension. Then he moves. In one swift motion, he grabs the notebook from my hands. For a moment, I think he will tear it apart, but he doesn't. Instead, he flips through the pages, his eyes scanning my words, my thoughts, my defiance. "You don't fear me." It is not a question. It is an observation, a realization. I take the pen from his hand, my fingers brushing against his. Then I write. Slow, deliberate. Should I? His lips press into a thin line. He tosses the notebook onto the table, the pages fluttering like a dying bird. "Perhaps not," he murmurs, his gaze locked onto mine. "But you should be careful, wife." I lift the pen once more, my heart hammering, but my face calm. "And why is that?" His eyes darken. He steps closer, his presence consuming the space between us. "Because you're walking on the edge of a blade," he whispers, his voice dangerously low. "And if you're not careful, you might just fall." I hold his gaze, my silence louder than any scream. And then, I write my final words for the night. "Or perhaps, I will be the one to make you fall first." His expression flickers, something unreadable, something dangerous. Then, without another word, he turns and leaves. But as he walks away, I know one thing for certain. This game has only just begun. The cracks in his armor. The game has begun. I see it in the way Rian watches me now, his once casual glances turning into calculated assessments. He thought he was marrying a mute woman, an easy pawn to control. But now he knows better. Now he knows I am not someone to be tamed. A shift in the air, something is changing between us. The silence that once suffocated is now charged with an unspoken challenge. At breakfast, he sits across from me as usual, but today, his attention is not on his newspaper, it is on me. His fingers tap lightly against his coffee cup, a slow rhythmic sound that matches the unspoken tension between us. "You've been keeping yourself busy," he finally says, his voice smooth, unreadable. I take my pen, not breaking eye contact, and write, "Should I not?" His lips curve into something that is not quite a smirk, not quite a frown. "Depends. Do you enjoy testing my patience?" I tilt my head slightly, feigning innocence. Then I write, "Does it bother you?" A pause. His fingers tighten around his cup for a fraction of a second. "Not in the way you think," he murmurs. The words send a chill down my spine, but I refuse to let it show. Instead, I place my pen down deliberately, my gaze steady. This is a battle neither of us is willing to lose, a mysterious visit. That afternoon, a visitor arrives. I watch from the balcony as a sleek black car pulls into the driveway. A man steps out, tall, sharp-eyed, his presence radiating authority. He carries himself with an air of familiarity, as if he belongs here. Rian is already waiting at the entrance. They exchange words I cannot hear, but I don't need to. The tension in Rian's posture tells me enough. This is not a casual meeting. Curious, I move closer, staying hidden behind the curtain. Then, I see it. A flicker of something rare in Rian's expression. Unease. Who is this man? And why does he make Rian uneasy? A locked door. Later that night, after the visitor has left, I find myself drawn back to his study. I am careful. My footsteps silent against the polished floor. The locked drawer remains untouched, mocking me. Secrets are buried here, secrets I need to uncover. I reach for my pen and notebook, leaving behind another message on his desk. Even locked doors can be opened. Then I retreat. A dangerous confrontation. I don't make it far. The moment I step out of the study, a strong hand grabs my wrist. My breath catches. Rian. His grip is firm, not painful, but enough to send a clear message. His eyes, dark and unreadable, bore into mine. "Do you enjoy tempting fate?" he murmurs, his voice low, dangerous. I do not flinch. Instead, I raise my free hand. lifting the notebook. With slow, deliberate strokes, I write, "Only when fate is afraid of me." Something flashes in his eyes, something sharp, something intrigued. His fingers tighten for a moment before he releases me. "You think you're untouchable?" he says, studying me as if trying to figure out what to do with me. I write again, "Number, I think I'm unpredictable." He exhales sharply, a quiet chuckle slipping past his lips. "That," he says, stepping back, "you certainly are." Then he walks away, leaving me alone in the dim hallway. But I do not feel alone. I feel victorious. And that is far more dangerous, breaking the silence. The air between us is no longer just tension, it is fire. A game of power, of control, of silence and defiance. Rian watches me closely now, his eyes searching for weakness. But I have none to give, not to him, not to a man who married me for money, but something has changed. I can feel it, and so can he. A night of unspoken truths. Tonight, the house is eerily quiet. The staff has retired, the grand halls echoing with nothing but the whisper of the wind against the windows. I am in the library, my fingers trailing over the spines of books I have never read, yet ones that have borne witness to the many secrets of this house. And then he enters. Rian. He leans against the doorframe, arms crossed, his gaze unreadable. "You have a habit of wandering places you shouldn't," he murmurs. I do not react, do not look away. Instead, I take my notebook and write, "Perhaps it is this house that should not keep so many secrets." His lips twitch, but there is no amusement in his expression. "You are relentless," he says. I write again, "And you are hiding something." Silence stretches between us, thick and suffocating. Then, he exhales sharply, pushing off the doorframe and stepping toward me. "Tell me something," he says, his voice quieter now. "Do you ever wonder why I married you?" I grip my pen tightly. "For my money." His smirk is humorless. "Yes," he admits, his honesty cutting like a blade. "But that's not the only reason." Something in his tone makes my breath hitch. I write, slower this time. "Then tell me the rest." A pause. He looks at me as if debating whether or not to speak, whether or not to give me a piece of the truth I seek. Then, finally, "I needed a wife I couldn't be deceived by," he says. "A woman who couldn't lie to me. A woman whose silence I could control." A cruel truth. A calculated choice. I tighten my grip on the pen, my knuckles turning white. And then, I write the only response that truly matters. "You made a mistake." He reads the words. His jaw tightens. And for the first time, I see something in his eyes that I never expected. Regret, the unraveling. The next morning, the mansion is different. The servants are tense. The air is heavier. Something is happening. And then I hear it. Raised voices. I follow the sound, my heartbeat quickening. At the entrance, Rian stands facing the same man from before, the visitor who unsettled him. But this time, there is no calm discussion. This time, there is anger. "I warned you," the man hisses. "She is not someone you can control." I freeze. Are they talking about me? Rian's expression is dark, dangerous. "And I told you, it doesn't concern you." The man scoffs. "Doesn't concern me? You think she doesn't know? You think she won't find out?" Rian's gaze flickers. My breath catches. "Find out what?" The man turns then, his sharp eyes locking onto mine. For a moment, everything stops. Then he speaks. "You deserve to know the truth," he says. "About him. About why he really needed this marriage." My hands tremble. Rian moves instantly, stepping between us, his voice a warning. "Enough!" But it is too late. The man looks directly at me, and then, with quiet finality, he says, "Your father's death wasn't an accident." The world tilts, I hear a gasp, my own. My pulse roars in my ears. I whip my head toward Rian, searching for denial in his face. But he does not speak, he does not deny it, and that is how I know. The real game has just begun. The truth beneath the silence. The world around me shatters. The words echo in my mind, burning through my thoughts like fire. Your father's death wasn't an accident. The weight of it crushes my chest, makes my vision blur. The room is spinning, or maybe it's just my heartbeat slamming against my ribs. And Rian, he doesn't deny it. He doesn't say a word. That silence is louder than any confession. A choice between love and vengeance. I feel the pen slip from my fingers, my notebook threatening to fall to the ground. But I don't let it. I clutch it tightly, just like I cling to the last remnants of my sanity. I force myself to write. Tell me the truth. Rian's jaw tightens. His hands clench at his sides. The man beside him watches with sharp eyes, waiting, knowing what I am about to uncover. I warned you, the man says again, softer this time. She would find out. Rian exhales sharply, his gaze locked onto mine. And then finally, I didn't kill him, he says, but I didn't stop it either. The breath leaves my lungs. I stagger back, gripping the edge of the nearest chair for support. He didn't kill my father, but he let it happen. The man beside him scoffs. You didn't just let it happen, you profited from it. You married his daughter and took control of his empire. Don't pretend you're innocent in this, Rian. I feel sick. Everything was a lie. The marriage, the quiet, unspoken moments between us, the nights I spent trying to understand him, trying to decode the man who had trapped me in this silent battle. It was all built on the blood of the only man who ever protected me. And he, Rian, the man I had spent so long fighting, challenging, was the same man who had let my father die, the silent storm. Rian takes a step toward me, but I raise a hand, stopping him in his tracks. I pick up my pen. With shaking hands, I write the words I never thought I'd have to say. Was anything real? For the first time since I've known him, Rian looks lost. His lips part, but no words come out. And that tells me everything I need to know. I turn on my heel. Where are you going? He demands. I do not answer. I do not need to, because he already knows. I am leaving. The final move. The mansion is dark as I walk through its halls for the last time. Every step feels heavier, but my resolve does not waver. This place is a prison, a place of betrayal. I will not stay. As I reach the door, I hear footsteps behind me. Don't do this. Rian's voice is quiet, almost desperate, but I do not turn back. I take my notebook one last time, writing with slow, deliberate strokes. You made your choice, Rian. Now, I'm making mine. A sharp exhale, a rare moment of vulnerability in his stance. If you walk away now, he says, there's no coming back. I pause. For the briefest of moments, I think about it. I think about him, about us, about the war we fought, the fire that burned between us. But then I remember the truth. I remember the blood on his hands, and I walk away. I do not look back. I never will. The end.